Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. In this video I'm gonna tell you everything about the all new Canon EOS R5 as well as the new R6 and my thoughts as a professional filmmaker on these cameras. Coming up! Hi guys, I'm Paul, I'm a German filmmaker and this channel is all about gear reviews, filmmaking, but also DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribe. So as I've already said, Canon just announced the all new Canon EOS R5 and R6 and both cameras are really incredible. So let's start with the R5, which will be the flagship camera, the new flagship camera of Canon, and the R5 is aimed to be a high-res camera, which Canon said the R6 will more be the all-round camera for a much cheaper entry price, but we'll come to that later in the video. So we already knew that the camera will shoot up to 8K in up to 30 frames per second in RAW. Now we know that it's the same RAW as in the 1DX Mark III. So we get the Cinema RAW Lite, which is really good, and we have the 12-bit and in a full frame sensor. We also know that we have a 45 megapixel sensor that was rumored, now it's official, and we will be able to grab 35 megapixel stills from the 8K video RAW recording, which is pretty handy. I personally don't think that I will need 8K, but it's really helpful. If you shoot in 8K, then you can reframe everything later because you have that amount of detail and data and room to play with. You can also shoot in 8K all eye compression, also in DCI 8K and UHD 8K. So you can also do that. But also really impressive is that we have 4K 120 frames per second full frame, no crop, as well as in the 8K or in every recording mode we won't have any crop at all. Canon just said that even in full HD we don't have the 120 frames just yet, but Canon is already thinking about rolling that feature out in a future firmware update, which is pretty good. So now let's talk about the media. We will have one CFExpress card slot and one SD card slot, and you have to be aware of the recording modes that you are into, because you have the all eye compression, which gives you bigger file sizes but also has more detail to play around with, and those files are only going to be stored to the CFExpress card as well as the raw recording, obviously, and the smaller IBB compression, which gives you smaller file sizes, but they're also more compressed, which will be heavier to edit on. So these ones are going to be stored onto SD card. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. But also we have 10-bit C-Log in all these modes, and also a 10-bit HQ or a picture quality mode. So that's I think that's something like a hybrid log gamma, I'm not sure. But one of the biggest features for me as a filmmaker is that we have 10-bit C-Log. It's gonna be an H.265 file, so that is basically more compressed than H.264, and it will be a little bit heavier to edit on. So keep that in mind if you're gonna be purchasing this camera, that you need a faster computer. There was also the question if we will have a record limit in 8K, something like ridiculously 5 minutes or something like that. No, we can shoot up to 30 minutes as we always can with Canon cameras. That is the rule, the limitation, but that's for all Canon cameras except the video cameras. But since this is a mirrorless camera, we also will have this limitation. But also in RAW we can technically shoot up to 30 minutes. And I think from the body it's really impressive how small this camera is and can internally record 8K in up to 30 minutes in RAW without any overheating, shutting down and something like going crazy. This is just mind-blowing, because just remember the Panasonic S1H, which is so big because of the internal fan, because it can record up to 6K. And now the EOS R5 is not even bigger than the EOS R, which I'm recording on right now, and can shoot 8K RAW without overheating. So I'm really impressed about that, and yeah, I'm really happy to test it out soon. Speaking of testing out, it will be available by the end of July. So already by the end of this month, you can pre-order it, you can order it, and the price will be $3,899. So yeah, a little bit more than as expected, but I think compared to the 1DX Mark III, and what this camera offers you, it's basically a really great camera. And I haven't talked about the in-body image stabilization yet. So the camera will have an IBIS internally, so we will have the electronically stabilization, which you can turn on and off as you like, but you will also have like a moving sensor, which is basically the counterpart and will stabilize your footage. And from what I've seen and what Canon told us, it is gonna be really amazing. So yeah, I'm pretty anticipated, or I'm pretty excited how that actually works in real life, and if it's gonna be that good as, for example, in the Panasonic GH5 or S1H or something like these Panasonic cameras. So what do I think as a filmmaker about the Canon EOS R5? I think personally the body is really great, but I'm planning on to get a battery grip that is a little bit bigger and easier to manage on something like a glide cam, and the battery grip that Canon will announce will be the same for the R5 and the R6. So it's going to be recorded or on the on the batteries that we already know. I think the battery life will be pretty decent, but of course, if you're gonna shoot in 8K RAW, you're gonna eat lots of juice and data and all that stuff. So, but do you really need 8K? I personally think that I won't need 8K that much. I think it's nice to have if you want to shoot RAW and if you want to get the most potential out of the camera, because in that mode you will have the highest dynamic range. You have 12-bit RAW, and in the other modes you have only 10-bit. But it's in 8K full frame, which is pretty amazing, and with the new dual pixel autofocus, which the deep learning curve, which also the 1DX Mark III has, so that is pretty impressive. And we will have it in all modes, no crop, dual pixel autofocus in all modes, so that's pretty impressive about here. So we will have all these different recording options, but at the end of the day, I think it's really nice that we have a super sampled 4K, which basically means that the camera takes the 8K and super samples it down to 4K, so the same what you basically do in your computer or in your editing software, which will result in a much sharper, in a much more detailed 4K. That's awesome for me, also with the 120 frames per second. With the in-body image stabilization, I think will work great, but we'll have to see how that looks in real life. The camera, as I've already said, has a 45 megapixel sensor, so that leads me to the question if the camera will be good in low light, because the bigger the sensor or the more megapixels you have, the more noisy will become the footage in low light. So therefore I know it's gonna be a new camera, so I think Canon will have done some work, some preparation for that. But I think the camera should be at least able to shoot clean ISO 6400, because otherwise that would be a pretty big bummer. So now let's move on to the EOS R6. Canon claimed that the EOS R6 will be a pretty nice low light camera. It will have a 20 megapixel sensor, really similar to what the 1DX Mark III have. It will have the same in-body image stabilization as the R5, which is pretty great. It will have the same dual pixel autofocus system than the R5 and the 1DX Mark III, which is also pretty great. The body will be the same. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, the EOS R5 will be weather sealed, so that's pretty awesome. The EOS R6 will be not as weather sealed, whatever that means. What I like the most is that it has the little switch on top. It won't have the little screen on top, which the EOS R5 has and which the EOS R has. So I personally like the dial to dial in my modes basically, but yeah, that's just a personal preference. So now let's come to the video specs. So the camera will have a 5K sensor and it will downsample or super sample that for you to a 4K image, and you can record in 4K in up to 60 frames per second. But hold on, in the 4K 60p you will have a crop, the same crop as you will have in the 1DX Mark III. So it's a 1.3x crop. That's a bummer, but of course it's not the high-end camera here. You will have 4K full frame in up to 30p. But the biggest bummer for me is that it only shoots in IBP compression. So it has a higher compression, so it will give you much smaller file sizes, but you don't have the all-eye compression you only have when you shoot movie time-lapse. So in some cases, or in most situations, when you're going to do color grading or effects or anything like that, any amount of data that the camera captures will help you to get the best out of the footage. And if you have already high compressed codec in camera, it's not that ideal. So I think personally the EOS R5 is the much bigger option, because the much better option, because of the all-eye compression you have. You will have bigger files, but you will also have more flexibility in post to manipulate. Also talking about post and to manipulate the files, you won't get any raw recording or anything like that. So as I've said, the sensor is a 5K sensor and it will super sample it down to 4K. So it will be a much cleaner 4K than it only has a 4K sensor or something like that. It's full frame, it has an amazing dual pixel autofocus, but we'll have to see if that works in the 4K 60. I'm not sure about that just yet, but I will update my description so whenever that's out, so please check that out for this information. But actually the camera is pretty intriguing for me. It can shoot full HD in 120 frames per second. So I think for the most situations you are pretty good covered with the EOS R6. It also shoots in 10-bit C-Log, also H.265 compression, so much higher compression, much harder to edit on. But I think for most of the people like me and all other people, that is already a great deal. So speaking about the deal, the camera will cost up to $2,500 and will be available by the end of August. So you have to wait 1 month longer than for the EOS R5. But I think, but we'll have to see when the camera will really ship. On the EOS R6 you won't have any CFExpress cards. You can record everything onto SD cards. You have 2 slots of them, so that's pretty neat. And as I've already said, if you want to have a bigger battery life, you can also have a battery grip, and that's the same for the EOS R6. What do I personally think about both cameras? I personally really like the EOS R5 because I think if you're gonna have that camera, you're pretty much covered for the next years. The cinema raw light is, I don't like that format too much compared to other raw formats, but I think when you're gonna shoot with it, you will have great colors. I really like the in-body image stabilization on both cameras, so that will be pretty awesome. 10-bit C-Log is, I think, my most favorite feature. Also the EOS R6 compared to the EOS R5 is a pretty nice camera. It has basically the same sensor as the 1DX3, so you can also shoot 20 frames stills, 20 frames per second stills with the electronic shutter, and with the mechanical it's like 12 frames. So, and Canon said it will be really good in low light, so yeah, let's wait for that. Yeah, that's kind of my question, if it will be the good low light camera, whereas the EOS R5 is more like the high res camera, as Canon said. Yeah, but I think if we're gonna end up delivering in 4K and recording in 8K, the noise pattern will also get much smaller, so it's not as noticeable. But yeah, as I've already said, we have to wait until I get the camera in my hands or in everybody's hands, so that we can yeah, shoot some real-world footage to test it out. So as I've already said, the biggest bummer for me isn't actually the crop on the EOS R6, but it's the IBP compression. I think I really like the all-eye codec from Canon, because also in full HD you got really big files and you have all these data to play around with, and it looks much cleaner than some other hardly compressed 4K files of any like Panasonic cameras or something like that. So I really will miss the all-eye compression. Yeah, but if you personally, it's not a big deal for you, then go for the EOS R6. I think price and value is really great on this camera. So yeah guys, there you have it. If you have any further questions, just let me know in the comments below. I will answer them as soon as possible, and I see you in my very next video. Cheers!